Sustainable utilization has played a pivotal role in South Africa's wildlife conservation success story. This fact is supported by global conservation icons, some of whom we recently interviewed.
Well, perhaps I should introduce myself first, just to say that my name is Ian Player. I have now had 62 years of involvement in conservation and the environment, 22 years of it spent as a professional wildlife officer. Yes, there is no doubt at all of that, and it is particularly illustrated by the rhino story, the white rhino story, which I have told in great detail in my book, The White Rhino Saga.
Absolutely. Hunting has played a huge role in the wildlife success story over the last 45 years. This all started in the early 60s when Dr. Ian Player realized that the rhinos needed actually to be spread. They were very much compartmentalized. So what happened was rhinos were put into the hands of private landowners for the first time.
It was a very difficult move, but it has paid enormous dividends because the hunters who were hunting them got paid very good prices, and that money was reinvested in the purchase of land and then reinvested again into the purchase of rhino.
But the important thing was that there was an incentive for landowners to care for these animals because there was a value that came through hunting.
My name is Bandile Mkhize, Chief Executive Officer of SMVelo KZN Wildlife, the official conservation agency for the province of KwaZulu-Natal. South Africa has come a long way in terms of sustainable use of resources, and I think that is what sets us apart from other countries. And in that process, what we have done is to involve communities as well. And that is what is very important. And our model of conservation is really based on sustainable use. That is why we have legal hunting, which is very important for us in terms of spreading the species that we have, and at the same time also satisfying the needs of the communities that live around our protected areas.
And I don't think that anybody can argue against that.
There's no doubt whatsoever that game industry is far more profitable than cattle, for example, because your per capita return from a hunter is very much more than an eco-tourist, say a bird watcher.
There is no doubt that this is the case. And one has only got to look to the Highlands of Scotland, where the deer survive because of the hunting that takes place on these great estates. The hunters range right from royalty down to the landed gentry in England. But the survival of the deer is the deer are there because of the hunting that takes place.
As a result of this, now you find that there are over 10,000 game ranches in South Africa. We've got about 20.5 million hectares of land which is privately being managed by game farmers, as compared with 7.5 million hectares of government land. The industry provides over 100,000 jobs.
We've got quite a number of community conservation areas that have benefited immensely from the sale of the rhinos that they have. And that is why even at our auctions, we sell rhinos that come from these particular conservation areas, and the proceeds go to the communities. And I must indicate that from where I sit, I believe that the future of conservation, it lies in how we relate to communities.
I have no doubt that the wildlife in this country would be in serious danger. And what has happened in Uganda, in Kenya, are the warnings of what can happen. There's not much more that needs to be said on that.
I must hasten to say that it is my sincere belief that there is no other country that knows better about rhino conservation than South Africa. We've been in this game for a very long time. So when we talk about the sustainable use of resources, especially resources that pertain to rhino, we know exactly what we are talking about, because we own the greatest population of rhinos in Africa. So if there's anybody that is supposed to talk authoritatively in terms of rhino conservation, it is us. So I don't think the Kenyans had applied their minds when they spoke about this. I think they were becoming emotional. And what I've learned in my career in conservation is that we've got to think through whatever proposals we put forward, because we don't want to impose our wishes on other people that know better about what we are talking about.
Well, if the lobbyists won the battle and hunting was banned completely in this country, we actually have a fine example that we can refer to of what would happen in a situation like that. In the 70s, for example, all forms of consumptive animal use was banned in Kenya. This is hunting, this is culling, game ranching, etc. It was just stopped. Now, as a result of that, two things happened. The first thing is South Africa's game industry started booming because they couldn't hunt anymore in Kenya. They came to South Africa. As a result of that, more game farms were being formed and more money was being put into preserving game and wildlife in this country. The second thing that happened was that the numbers of game in Kenya dwindled dramatically, so much so that both outside and to an extent within the national parks in Kenya, the game numbers have dropped to 60 to 70% of what they were in the 70s. I'm talking about 2/3 of the game in Kenya has been lost as a result of the banning of hunting in that country. So this is a very important thing, and at our peril will we ban hunting in this country, lest the same thing happens here. Well, South Africa has won several awards worldwide as being one of the top tourist destinations in the world. That's the first thing. But apart from that, from a hunting point of view, it has the greatest diversity of species that can be hunted within these borders.
Got everything it takes here, from wildlife, from the sunny skies, to the sea. We've got everything that a tourist would want to see. So I'm saying to all those people that want to come to South Africa, you are welcome to South Africa, the sunny South Africa. It's not just South Africa, it's sunny South Africa. But our wildlife is unsurpassed. And the way in which we look after our wildlife is unparalleled in the world. So come and see wildlife conservation at its best, because that's what we have got to offer as South Africa.
But this is where we all came from. So in my own promotions of this country, I've always said, come home. This was your original home. And in the many trails that I have taken in Umfolozi and Isimangaliso and elsewhere, Botswana, one of the first things that comes up when I talk about, your home, they tell me, no, I come from Brooklyn or wherever it is. And say, no, this is your home. And psychologically, it's very interesting that after a few days, people begin to feel at home, which is not surprising, because Africa is deeply imprinted on the human psyche.
And then, of course, you have the wonderful, rich cultural heritage that South Africa has to offer. You have landscapes which are unparalleled. You have the currency exchanges, which in South Africa is a good destination to come to in terms of value for money. Then there's also the facilities and the service in South Africa. Our airports have been voted amongst the top in the world, and the fact that you can communicate in English, there are no language problems here either. So there are a number of huge advantages to coming to South Africa as a destination.
So this is a continent of great importance to every human being, and I don't think that you can say that you have really lived until you've been to Africa. One looks, for example, at someone like Teddy Roosevelt, who went hunting with Frederick Courtenay Selous. And when Teddy Roosevelt went back to the United States, one of the first things that he did was to create more national parks. It was that inspiration of Africa that made that huge impression upon him. And then one thinks too of Professor Carl Jung, the greatest world psychiatrist from Switzerland, who said after coming to Africa, "Thank God I had the opportunity of going to Africa." It was the most illuminating part of my life.
Illuminate your life. Visit South Africa.